So, the absolute most unprecedented, publicly humiliating, and historically catastrophic physical confrontation in the entire modern history of the British royal family has just violently exploded right at the heavily fortified iron gates of Windsor Castle. While the incredibly panicked palace public relations machine is desperately working overtime to completely bury this massive story under a mountain of sanitized press releases, the brutally honest, unvarnished truth is that Prince William personally and ruthlessly orchestrated the total, humiliating physical expulsion of Queen Camilla's own biological son, Tom Parker Bowles. He aggressively tossed him out into the freezing night like a common, unwanted trespasser in an earth-shattering move that permanently shatters the manufactured global illusion of a peacefully blended royal family. If you've been obsessively watching the deeply toxic power struggles constantly simmering beneath the incredibly polished surface of the Windsor dynasty, you absolutely need to buckle up and pay incredibly close attention. I am Henry Vance, and you must hit that subscribe button for Create Pakistan right now as we mercilessly pull back the heavy velvet curtain on this explosive, psychologically terrifying display of raw, unchecked future sovereign power. You have to completely and ruthlessly deconstruct absolutely everything you think you know about how the modern British monarchy actually functions. The widely accepted narrative that King Charles is fully in control of his sprawling household is actually nothing more than a brilliant smokescreen designed strategically to hide the terrifyingly massive reality that Prince William has already quietly seized absolute operational control of the entire sovereign institution. This incredibly violent, highly public confrontation at Windsor Castle was the definitive, world-stopping proof that the future king is fiercely playing a zero-sum game of absolute institutional survival, where he will brutally crush absolutely anyone who dares to threaten the historical integrity of his family's legacy. The explosive, totally unprecedented sequence of events officially kicked off on the freezing, highly anticipated evening of the astronomically expensive Royal Charity Gala of the decade. Hosted directly within the ancient, heavily decorated grand halls of Windsor Castle, the priceless crystal chandeliers were blazing, and the absolute most elite politicians and international billionaires were all dressed in their finest custom-tailored evening wear. The entire royal family was explicitly ordered to be on their absolute best behavior, because this was exactly the kind of highly scrutinized public event where the monarchy was desperately supposed to look perfectly unified and existing far above the deeply toxic human drama that constantly plagues their private lives. King Charles was physically present in the glittering hall, looking visibly exhausted and incredibly frail from his ongoing medical treatments, chatting amicably with incredibly wealthy mega-donors. Meanwhile, Prince William was intensely and masterfully working the entire massive room, brilliantly running the operational and strategic side of the highly complex evening. He seamlessly moved between elite diplomatic conversations and highly classified security briefings, perfectly projecting the undeniable, fiercely protective image of a strong, highly capable future monarch who was completely in charge of the massive, billion-dollar royal ship. Everything was allegedly going incredibly smoothly until a massive, highly conspicuous luxury black security SUV aggressively pulled up directly to the main, heavily guarded exterior security checkpoint of the ancient castle. Out stepped Tom Parker Bowles, the highly controversial, incredibly arrogant civilian son of Queen Camilla, proudly holding a heavily forged, incredibly realistic golden embossed royal invitation. He actively radiated the exact kind of sickening, unearned overconfidence that a person possesses only when they foolishly believe they have already completely won the ultimate game of royal access. Tom confidently walked straight up to the heavily armed, unsmiling elite royal security checkpoint and aggressively played the manipulative emotional card everyone expected. He loudly announced himself as the biological son of the reigning queen consort, falsely claiming that King Charles himself had personally invited him, arrogantly acting like the elite guards should simply bow their heads and blindly wave him straight through the massive iron gates without a single second of hesitation. But here is the massive, utterly catastrophic problem Tom completely failed to anticipate in his incredibly greedy quest for unearned royal validation. The uncompromising royal security commanders meticulously checked the final, digitally encrypted master guest list. This was the exact same, highly restricted, totally unchangeable list that Prince William himself had brutally approved line by line just a few incredibly tense hours earlier. Tom Parker Bowles's name was definitively and entirely not on it. Without a single typo or bureaucratic oversight, he was simply not invited and was legally entirely unwelcome on the highly protected sovereign grounds. The incredibly calm, highly disciplined senior security commander looked Tom dead in the eyes and firmly told him that undeniable truth, informing him that he was required to immediately turn his vehicle around and vacate the premises before he was actively considered a hostile trespasser. This is exactly where Tom Parker Bowles began to completely, spectacularly, and publicly unravel, completely losing his entirely fake aristocratic composure. He immediately raised his voice to an embarrassing, echoing shout, furiously waving the forged invitation in the freezing night air, demanding to know if these lowly security guards actually understood exactly who his powerful mother was. He viciously threatened them with severe, career-ending consequences, explicitly screaming that he would have every single one of them permanently fired the exact second he got inside the castle to speak directly to the king. But the fiercely loyal royal guards did not flinch, back down, or move a single inch. They had been flawlessly trained for exactly this kind of volatile psychological situation, and vastly more importantly, they had already secretly received ironclad operational orders directly from Prince William's private security office, detailing exactly what to do if Tom arrogantly attempted to force his way inside. While Tom was standing outside in the freezing courtyard, screaming uncontrollably and creating a massive, highly undignified public spectacle in front of dozens of shocked domestic palace staff members, inside the insulated Grand Gala Hall, Prince William's heavily encrypted private mobile phone suddenly vibrated. Signaling an immediate security breach at the primary perimeter, William effortlessly stepped away from an incredibly sensitive conversation with a multi-million-dollar international charity donor. He calmly stepped into a quiet, shadowed stone alcove and took the urgent call from his senior head of security. The exact moment William heard what was happening at the gates, his polite public demeanor shifted violently into absolute, ice-cold sovereign mode. His jaw tightened fiercely, his deep blue eyes went terrifyingly cold, and he ruthlessly ordered his security team absolutely not to let Tom step a single inch inside the grounds, stating he would immediately handle the incredibly dangerous situation himself. William deliberately glanced across the crowded, noisy room at his frail father, entirely unaware of the explosive family crisis rapidly unfolding just a few hundred yards away. In that profound moment of clarity, William made an irreversible executive decision. He was definitively not going to let this incredibly arrogant boundary violation slide. To deeply understand why William reacted with such unyielding fury to this guest list infraction, you have to rewind the timeline about 1 full month to a highly secretive, tense sit-down meeting inside Clarence's house. Queen Camilla had desperately asked for a totally private audience, making a highly calculated emotional pitch. She explicitly requested that William legally allow Tom to formally attend the upcoming Windsor charity gala as an officially recognized extended member of the working royal family, manipulatively leaning on the excuse that King Charles desperately wanted familial harmony in his final years. William had sat completely still and unreadable, listening intently to her desperate, tear-filled plea, and then he brutally shut the entire proposition down with absolute, terrifying, ice-cold finality. Looking his highly ambitious stepmother directly in the eyes, he told her flat out that if Tom Parker Bowles ever appeared publicly at a major royal event alongside the working royals, the global press would automatically interpret his presence as holding an active, highly influential role within the crown. William firmly stated that such a terrifying institutional blurring of sacred lines was never going to happen under his strict watch. He coldly told the shocked queen consort that the 1,000-year-old royal family was not a profitable networking opportunity meant to cheaply expand the corporate influence of her entirely civilian family. The freezing conversation abruptly ended, with Camilla leaving the room pale with barely concealed rage. William was entirely certain that Camilla was the singular mastermind who secretly, illegally provided Tom with the restricted backdoor access. Camilla had cynically calculated that William wouldn't dare create a massive, noisy public scandal by having her biological son violently removed by armed security guards in front of hundreds of observing staff members. She genuinely thought the crushing pressure of basic royal decorum would force him to stay totally silent. That deeply toxic assumption was her ultimate leverage, but she had massively miscalculated the vast, terrifyingly cold ocean of pure, suppressed rage that William truly harbored. Striding rapidly through the darkness like an inescapable force of divine retribution, William arrived at the freezing, heavily guarded castle gates. Tom was standing there completely red-faced, heavily sweating through his expensive tuxedo, pointing his shaking finger at the unbothered senior security commander. When Tom abruptly stopped screaming and physically saw the completely furious, unsmiling figure of Prince William emerging from the shadows, his sheer panic instantly shifted into deeply toxic resentment. Tom immediately went on the offensive, loudly demanding to know how William dared to have him illegally blocked, frantically insisting King Charles had explicitly invited him, and wildly accusing William of maliciously humiliating his innocent family out of pure spite. William absolutely did not flinch a single millimeter. He looked Tom straight in his sweating, terrified eyes and explicitly stated that his name was completely not on the cleared security list. He was not invited by the king, and the historically significant royal family was fundamentally not a place for his highly greedy, manipulative family to arrogantly force their way into. This is the exact, catastrophic moment Tom completely lost every single shred of his fake upper-class control. His flushed face violently twisting with absolute, unfiltered rage and profound public humiliation, Tom took a highly dangerous physical step forward toward the future king and screamed something so incredibly horrific and deeply personal that it permanently changed the freezing temperature of the confrontation. Tom viciously shouted that the deeply mourned late Princess Diana was absolutely nothing more than a pathetic, useless replacement who was never truly worthy of her historic position. He screamed that Camilla's highly superior family actually belonged deep inside the palace, that Camilla was the only woman Charles ever truly loved, and that William was nothing but a deeply damaged, pathetic child taking petty revenge out of pure jealousy. Screaming that incredibly traumatic, intensely abusive statement directly into the face of Prince William about his tragically killed mother was a massive, highly volatile psychological grenade tossed directly into his most painful, unhealed wound. You could visibly see the horrific insult land exactly where it was maliciously aimed. William's deep blue eyes flashed with unadulterated, murderous fury as the dark, painful memories of what Princess Diana endured directly because of Camilla's cruel manipulations violently surfaced. But miraculously, William did not explode into a massive, embarrassing physical fit of rage. He took an incredibly deep, controlled breath, forcefully reining in his boiling emotions with the iron discipline of a true future sovereign. His resonant voice turned terrifyingly ice-cold, devoid of any human empathy. He stared directly into Tom's terrified eyes and firmly stated that Princess Diana is his deeply beloved mother and an inseparable, permanent part of the royal family's sacred history. He declared that Camilla's greedy civilian family would never be allowed to use the protected monarchy as a dirty tool, and then he coldly gave the final executive order: remove him immediately. The highly elite, heavily armed royal security team acted instantly and flawlessly. Two massive, incredibly muscular guards aggressively moved to either side of the deeply humiliated Tom Parker Bowles, tightly gripping his tailored arms with unyielding force. They physically escorted him away into the dark, freezing night while he desperately struggled, wildly flailing his arms and screaming at the top of his lungs that William would deeply regret this massive insult. His highly embarrassing shouts grew fainter as he was completely removed from the massive iron gates, while William simply stood there in the freezing rain, entirely unblinking, watching intensely until the screaming man was totally gone from his sight. Dozens of highly observant palace staff members and royal aides witnessed every brutal second of it, and the incredibly explosive news rapidly spread through the ancient stone corridors of the castle like an uncontrollable, highly destructive wildfire. William slowly turned his broad back on the freezing gates and walked purposefully back toward the warmly lit, glittering gala hall. He paused in the shadows, taking one incredibly deep breath, intimately knowing that this highly explosive incident could not stay safely secret forever. The deeply intrusive British tabloid media would inevitably dig into the explosive story eventually, but he also deeply knew that he had just successfully, permanently stopped an incredibly dangerous, highly destructive precedent from taking root inside the monarchy. Tom Parker Bowles absolutely did not set a single solitary foot inside the highly protected, heavily restricted gala. He was absolutely not photographed smiling alongside working royal family members, and the global public did not wake up to entirely manufactured headlines about Camilla's civilian son being officially recognized as a core member of the institution. That incredibly dangerous, highly toxic door was permanently slammed shut by a future king who proved he is completely willing to brutally enforce the sacred boundaries of his bloodline at any cost.